In relation to hate crimes, I wanted to just read out the operational guidance, which says the victim does not have to justify or provide evidence of their belief, and police officers or staff should not directly challenge this perception. It's entirely subjective, no evidence is required. We have become incredibly intolerant of other people's views. I mean, I think the thing that is shocking for me is that we talk about diversity all the time, but it's basically not diversity of opinion. We all know about these things. We're all aware of the kind of walking on eggshell stuff. So I just say that because I think that sometimes we assume that intolerance is only going to be in terms of directed against groups who have historically been oppressed, and I'm not saying that there's no oppression. Of course there is. Of course there's racism. Of course there's homophobia. Of course these things exist, and they should be challenged. But I think the greatest challenge for us today is that we don't listen to each other. I mean, that's one of the reasons I like these ThinkIns, right? Organised listening. We don't listen to each other. We talk past each other, or we try and shut people up by labelling them.
If you think about what happens on the internet, where people do live on the internet, and we all do. If you don't like something that someone says, you mute it, or you block it, or you troll it. So trolling gets given a word, and then the people know what to do with that. But then if you mute and block it, no one's talking about what happens when you're continually muting and blocking things and getting into your own space and just hearing the same things. And I think that's where news needs to be accountable, because we are hearing and seeing the same things again and again. And I'm seeing it in a lot of the work that I do, both with the company but also with Pride, because people talk about the LGBT community as one thing, and people say, oh, we're tolerant of the LGBT community, aren't we now, because we've got same-sex marriage and we've got X and we've got Y. But actually, when you look within a minority group like the LGBT community, there's massive intolerances within it. And that's, I think, in part technology, I think in part it's historical, but I think the bit that no one seems to talk about is what the effect of muting and blocking and living online, which increasingly is happening for younger people, is having in then how we function as a collaborative society. Because no one seems to, we've never done this before. We've never known what it's like to have a life like this, where we talk to each other in person, I can look you in the eyes. But if I look to you through my screen, we could have a really different interaction. And I think that shows something about how we are interacting as society, and actually where we're going. And I don't like where we're going, because I think it's quite scary.
My wife, she's an immigrant. She arrived in the country 4 years ago. And she says to me, she's never felt like it's personal. She feels like she's being treated as a homogenous group. So she's been lumped in with everyone else. And it's only when she starts speaking to people and they show levels of intolerance towards immigration, they always say the words, oh, I don't mean you, it's the others. And she hears that all of the time.
I don't believe that in the statistics, like where you see a rise in hate crime, and there is problems with definitions certainly, that any of those are driven by people viewing YouTube versions of Goodness Gracious Me. They're driven by political events. And what's quite telling there is that the biggest mover of hate crime, to push it in the wrong direction, was a political issue, not a terrorist one, which is quite surprising, where you have the vote on Brexit pushed the hate crime incidences to such a degree, whereas when you compare it to actual terrorist offences, where you would expect some sort of backlash, the base level wasn't moved that far from where it was.
I'm a teacher of over 20 years experience, and I just want to strike an optimistic tone here, that the generation that I teach today is far more tolerant than my generation was.
A few weeks ago, Nigel Farage's pop-up party came top in the European elections, the same Nigel Farage that stood under a vile poster with the words "breaking point" under it in the 2016 referendum. The Labour Party is under official investigation by the human rights watchdog for anti-Semitism, and the guy who is about to become Prime Minister thinks it's okay to call Muslim women bank robbers and letterboxes. And if you dare, as I have in print several times, to question this, you're told that you don't understand plain talking. Well, that seems to me to kind of answer the question. How have we got to a point where mocking a woman for her religious clothing is plain talking. What's happened to our political discourse? I think we're in a bad way.